Okay, um, so the purpose today, we do have an announcement about the case that initiated over at the Idaho Falls Costco uh, on November 20th. And so we may have difficulty, well, go ahead and close that door as well. We may have difficulty getting everybody to agree on the outcome, but it's certainly our hope that by presenting you the facts and the evidence that we can perhaps, at least let people know what we are considering as we make these decisions. And so at the end, I'll kind of go over the legal standards that we're trying to apply. So as I stated, this incident occurred at the Idaho Falls Costco on November 20th at about 10:30 in the morning. A mother was shopping. She had a car carrier in a cart. We'll have some photographs of that here in a minute. Her 1-month-old daughter was in the car carrier in that shopping cart. When the incident occurred, then the mother contacted Costco management. Costco management then contacted the Idaho Falls Police Department. Detectives were assigned to follow up on to identify the other individual that was involved. We'll be showing a video of kind of how that incident unfolded. The detectives did just some exemplary work in identifying who this individual was. He had entered the Costco using someone else's card. That's not a crime, but it was part of one of the facts that began to lead to some suspicion about what this individual was up to. This matter, of course, got some significant social media coverage. That was one factor in when they located this individual's vehicle. They were able to follow up with some video cameras for that parking lot and established that he had gone to the Marine Recruiting Center. He was identified as a current student for BYU-Idaho, and so upon contacting the Marines, we were able to find out that he had traveled to Boise and was going through MEPS. I'm not sure what that stands for, but some kind of introduction into the Marines. There was apparently an issue, a mental health issue that developed where he was returned to Idaho Falls, and that's where he was initially contacted by the police. I'm going to make sure everyone understands we do not have any kind of diagnosis or any kind of further information on any mental health issues that this individual might face. We're basically just relaying those things that were brought to our attention, and so we don't have a lot of information about what mental health issues might be there. We'll just report on those things that were part of our what we considered as we were putting the information together. He was contacted upon return, and he was taken to the Idaho Falls Police Complex. He was interviewed by 2 detectives. However, there were several leaders of the investigations division that were present there monitoring that. I was contacted, and myself and another prosecutor also went and observed those interviews. There were no admissions to any kind of criminal behavior. There was odd behavior that we were observing, and that was perhaps another factor that was kind of considered about what was going on with this individual and how that may have impacted this incident. So that occurred on the Wednesday prior to Thanksgiving. After the interviews were over, did have access to a video. That video was a copy that detectives had made by using a cell phone to take some video of a laptop at Costco. And so the cell phone was like this. The format of the screen was landscape, and so it certainly wasn't the perfect video that you would hope to have at that point. But there was some delay in getting downloads from. They had to go through a process to get that in a format that they could download. So that was what we had to view as of Wednesday. And I'll show that video hopefully now. I'll narrate this just a little bit. So the individual is on the other side of this book area. He's here. This is the mother and the cart that has the car seat in it. And I apologize for being in the way. So the individual grabs one end. He goes around the mother. She almost immediately notices that the cart is missing, and then she goes around the corner, and she catches up just a few feet beyond that corner. When we looked at this, now this is her coming back, and when we first looked at that, we had no idea where his cart was, but does anybody want us to roll that through again? Go those.
That would be great if you could, yeah.
So the things that were of particular interest is where is he looking? Intent in this kind of case is circumstantial. So knowledge, if he knows he's taking that cart, I'm not sure there's a reasonable alternative theory. It's a bit grainy, but in this, it's just really difficult to say one way or another whether he had seen the cart or looked into the cart.
Do you know what she said to him when she took the cart back, or?
Yeah, so when she confronted him, then he became apologetic. She took it back. I don't think there was a lot of talk from her, but he was apologetic, and she stated that he had said the words, "I'll never do that again." And so that was another factor that was added into the mix. In that group of people, so the two detectives, captain, lieutenant, two sergeants, two prosecutors, there was probably over 100 years of combined experience. And there was an absolute consensus that there was probable cause to believe that this was a crime. And at that point, he was taken into custody. So perhaps one of the things that has always been somewhat difficult for us to kind of really get our minds past as far as analyzing this case is just the difference of these carts. And so really what we were looking for is to try to get some explanation of how you could mistake a cart with a pumpkin pie and a box of milk with this car seat and the day pack, or whatever you would call that, diaper bag. This is not how they were positioned. That is like this. So she was in between the two carts, and then this would have been perhaps what that would have looked like if you were walking down the aisle. So she was looking at the Harry Potter books, and her cart was in front of her. At the time of the arrest, we did not know where the subject's cart was. So those are the kind of things that went into that probable cause decision. And that's what we had on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. The probable cause was reviewed by a magistrate on the day after Thanksgiving, which was Friday, and that was signed off, and the individual went for his first appearance before the magistrate on the Friday after Thanksgiving. That same day, they received the videos from Costco. And so we were able to, for the first time, at least the prosecutors and some of the leadership from the investigations division were able to see those videos as they were downloaded from. So this is the raw video. I should call it the raw video, but the unchanged video. Oh, it's already gone. Hang on. And so just to the left there, the subject comes into view. He leaves his cart. Let me redo that because we missed a little bit of it. But so here's where the books are. This is where the clothings are. The camera is directly over the top of what they call the center. This is him bringing his cart in. And because we now can see the entire width, we see where he parked his cart. They pass each other. So this is the mother. He moves his cart a little bit. Now, detectives were able to follow both individuals with the Costco cameras, and so they were able to basically follow them from the beginning when they come into the store and follow them throughout. There doesn't seem to be any interaction. I apologize. I think I misstated. I don't think that's her, but we'll see in a second.
Did it appear in any of the previous things that he had noticed her in any way previously?
That was not the conclusion of the detectives. Okay. They did not see any kind of stalking behavior or surveillance or whatever you would want to call it. All right, so here comes the mother. Does look like the same person, so. So as we watch him, I mean, there's just no definitive point where we can see him look at the cart. You know, it's grainy. Did he look then? We just can't tell. So there was some things that could kind of be spotted down here in that interaction, but it was pretty difficult to make anything out because of all the obstructions there. But this is him back. He's recovered the other cart, and then she's returned there to where she began. She actually knew this person here, and so they briefly converse. So that was the new information that we had on Friday. There was a weekend, some of the detectives had the Monday off, so we met on Tuesday. And the thing that we did is we put together a plan so that we could further develop this information, because it was critical that we get this right. It didn't matter which way it turned out to us. We had to be right, because if we have somebody who's innocent, then their reputation will suffer immensely, and we'd convict somebody who is not guilty. On the other side, if this was something that was intentional or criminal, it's a serious danger to our community. So there was clearly everybody was committed to doing whatever it takes to find evidence and just exhaust every possible line of investigation so that we could be confident in what we were looking at. And so on that day, and you really need to see this, but and it's going to go away anyway, it looks like, but we did put together kind of a 15-point investigative plan. We divided those things that IFPD detectives were going to do, and then we also had a few things that our investigator from the prosecutor's office was going to follow up on. And the emphasis at that point was to further develop what we could about what happened after he turned the corner. Part of that investigative plan was to do a couple of things that we really don't see very often. And so on Thursday, we conducted what was called a cognitive interview. So the reason for that technique is witnesses, when they're going through something that creates an incredible emotional impact, can have parts of their memory affected by that. And so often the mind will just start filling in pieces of that, the blanks, in order for it to make sense to them. And so we had to be very careful in the way the mother was interviewed, that we weren't planting answers in her mind, or that her mind wouldn't be creating an image based on something we were saying. And so a cognitive interview is a technique which allows the person to basically describe and narrate what they saw without questions that would plant an idea of what might be helpful to our investigation. That interview really did not produce a lot of new information, except for one fact that kind of stood out, and that was that the mother believed that the cart was stopped when she was approaching. So she didn't think the cart was still moving when she went around the corner. The next day, on Friday, then we went over to Costco for a reenactment. Again, it is a technique that's used. It's rare, but it's proven to be effective in other cases. And this was an opportunity for the mother to actually put herself back in the environment. And sometimes those images or the viewpoint, the perspective, will jog memory. And so it was very, very professionally done. I was very impressed with how the investigators were very careful how they reconstructed the setting there, and using the videos to help place things where they were, and so it was clear early on that some of the things that the mother was remembering wasn't correct according to the video. So we had shown her the video, and that was intentional so that she wasn't, again, being led what to say. But some of her memories were inaccurate. And so we took that into consideration, of course. And then again, the focal point is what happened after he went around that corner, because knowledge that there was a baby in that cart would have been essential to saying that this was an intentional act. So the intent in this has to be proven circumstantially, because we don't have any way to peer into this person's mind. And so that's the challenge, is trying to use the circumstances to suggest what was his intent. So after the reenactment, and this was very sophisticated. I mean, they had several cameras. They were showing the relationship of items. They were using a drone inside that was expertly piloted around to catch all of, so that if this were to go to a trial, then the jury could see the various distances and relationships. And this was pre the scan that we would normally do in a crime scene, using either an Oscar or a Faro laser scanner. And so that was planned for later, but to the best that we could match up items in the same place as the video showed, then we were doing that. During that reenactment, I had the opportunity to talk with one of the managers from Costco, and it was important that we were getting things in the right place, so I asked if we could go back and watch the videos one more time, make sure that we were placing things near landmarks we could ensure. He also explained to me where the various cameras were, which wasn't immediately, it wasn't something I understood immediately. When we were using the Costco videos they had provided, then we were looking at cameras that showed that area, and we were basing that on the name. So this was the center area. It said center camera 234. We were looking at those videos. But the manager then said, we have another angle that would have been from this camera over here. And this camera was literally halfway across the store. So it was not one, it was up front where the cashiers are. It wasn't one that we suspected would catch this angle at all. It was too far away. However, it was something that it did catch the person coming around the corner. It's far away, so it's a bit grainy, but there was also an ability to zoom. And so this is the video that we saw on the Friday a week after. So these are the front cashiers, and you can see it's a significant distance. But this aisle right here leads to the corner where the books are. So someone coming around this corner is going to hit that aisle. So there are parts of the video where you can see some of the actors' heads over the top of those, and that's why it's included in this video, but we'll see it pretty a lot more clearly here in a second. So that's actually her retrieving the cart right there. But I think you can see why we didn't think this was going to show anything. So what I'll do is switch over to the zoomed in. So again, they're trying to catch every view of when we can see that cart go by. And one of the factors that we're now taking into consideration is just how busy this area was. You can see, I mean, this is just very active. There's a lot of shoppers. All right, that's him coming around the corner, and he's pulling the cart behind him. That's Mother catching up, and that's when he turns and she retrieves the cart. Coming around the corner. He stops. He's looking at an end cap, and then he turns back and sees Mom. And this is where he's apologizing to her. So we have a fairly definitive narrative now of what happened after he turned that corner. It's grainy. It's not a perfect view, but it certainly seems inconsistent with an intent to take the baby and leave the area. I mean, we could speculate as to many possibilities, that, you know, that there was still some kind of criminal intent, but you know, what would fit the facts? As I think most of you are already aware, that he actually stayed in the store and then went to the food court and ended up, I think, having a piece of pizza. So here's where we're at as we, sorry, let me open this with a different. And this is just going to be what we do as prosecutors as far as the legal standard that we would apply. If what we can conclude based on the evidence is that this was possibly a crime, then that is reasonable suspicion. And the only thing under the law that allows is investigation. If we can say that the evidence indicates this was probably a crime, then that's probable cause and an arrest can be made. But ultimately, we have to get to this standard here, which is we have to be certain this is a crime. And that's the beyond a reasonable doubt. There's many limitations on what when a prosecutor should step in and replace the judgment of either judges or a jury. But there are unquestionably ethical duties of the prosecutor not to go forward on a case that doesn't meet the legal standard. And so for a prosecutor, the analysis is really, is there a rational basis for someone to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that they are to a moral certainty that this was a crime? And I don't think that we can say that. I just don't think a rational person looking at the evidence that we have could reach that conclusion. We certainly could take this case forward based on probable cause, which is the standard that gets us from arrest through preliminary hearing bound over to a district court. But again, that standard that we have to ethically be at is this was probably a crime and this person committed it. I don't think identity is an issue, time, place, jurisdiction, any of those things. It all comes down to, is this probably a crime or is this possibly a crime? And based on the reaction, and again, we're trying to establish intent by circumstantial evidence, can we reasonably conclude that this was probably a crime versus is it merely possibly a crime? And so it is, I believe that legally we can't reach that probable cause level based on the state of the evidence, which includes this new viewpoint that we were able to get from Costco. So we will be filing the motion to dismiss the case against Mr. Raine. If other evidence came to light that would push us potentially over that line, it could be refiled. Typically, this is going to be without prejudice. But given the state of the evidence, and I think extraordinary efforts by the detectives in the Idaho Falls Police Department to develop as much evidence and to answer as many questions about this as possible, I don't believe, in my professional opinion, that we arise to the level of probable cause anymore. And primarily based on that new evidence. we were able to see, there was no indication of intent to take that cart and run. That's just not what the video shows. So based on that, I think it would be inappropriate for me as the prosecuting attorney to move forward on the case, absent some kind of new development. And that's the crux of that. Are there any questions?
What does this mean for Mr. Raine as we move forward? What's the next step for him?
There would be no further judicial intervention. So the case is dismissed, and there's nothing more that the courts would have control over. There's nothing more that that we would be controlling. So.
Is he still in custody, or has he been released?
No. And I'm glad you brought that up. So some of these decisions have to be made with a sense of urgency, because at one point we had indication that we had a student, a college student in the middle semester, suddenly wanting to join the Marines and leave the area. So that's where there was at least some concern, some urgency on Wednesday that if we just put this off and continue to investigate, that we might have the suspect leave the area. So, yeah, that was the urgency then. On Friday, he bonded out. And so we would have had an urgency to meet these criteria on Friday based on having that piece of evidence that came in the first video from the first angle. Since he was out of custody, then we had some time to prepare for the preliminary hearing. And so that's why the next week we continued the investigation to kind of develop those facts. And so without that urgency that he was in custody, and he was bonding out as we received those Costco videos that Friday after Thanksgiving. And so that's why we took our time a little bit. Again, we want to be right, and then did those other actions, including some things that I didn't talk about, the 13 other steps that they were taking to try to develop all the evidence they could.
This question is for both you and Chief Johnson. Talk a little bit about the extraordinary efforts that your officers went to make sure that the correct decision was made on this.
So first off, I think if I could just talk about the mom for a minute. I got to meet with her and her husband and see the little baby, and they're just some great people. They really are, and I think anyone can imagine if your baby's sitting in a cart and someone takes your baby and goes, that is going to be the biggest thing that happens. I lost my kid once, and my wife has still not forgiven me for it. That is a huge thing, and I think they are really good people trying to do what they thought was right. Our job with the police department is not necessarily just to prove a case and lock people up. Our job is to get to the truth and find out what happened. And along the way, if you look at each decision point along the way, you watch that first video, it looks really suspicious. It looks like someone's trying to take a baby. You put the other factors in, like Mr. Neal said, the person that we were talking to drives from the Costco to the recruiting, leaves their car at the recruiting place and goes to Boise. That's not something that happens every day. That happens to occur at the exact same time. There's a lot of stuff going on right there. And so the detectives, and I think with consulting with the prosecutors, made the proper decision at that time in the interest of public safety and based off probable cause to make that arrest. That just doesn't end the case, though. There's a requirement to keep on going, and I think they did do a phenomenal job. And there was a lot of collaboration. First off, the Marine Corps was absolutely wonderful to work with. They were great. Costco was phenomenal to help us get all the stuff. Mr. Neal and his office were great. So there was a lot of collaboration. Some of our technology that the department has to be able to piece things together worked out really well. But the detectives just wanted to find out what happened and collect all the evidence, and you have to take that wherever it goes. So as I watch it, I was like, wow, look at that. I'm like, wow, we had a camera and we found out the license plate and we were able to find the car that day. From the time an unknown suspect was given to us to the time we had the suspect identified was less than a day. And then from the time we were able to work with the Marine Corps to actually get that suspect in custody was, again, less than a day. Then we had some times we went back and worked with Costco and recreated things and used some other stuff. We were able to get additional information. And how can I say this? I'm in the criminal justice system, so take my statement with the bias that I guess I have. This is the way it's supposed to work. You are innocent until proven guilty. So he has a presumption of innocence, and it's the state's job to prove he is guilty. And we keep looking at evidence, and we got more evidence that does not lead to guilt. It leads to a possibility of an exoneration, and we're ethically and morally obligated to turn that over, and that's the decision the prosecutor makes. And this is how the system is designed to work, everyone along the way doing their job. It's a separation of powers, and that's how it's supposed to work.
Has the mother been notified of what the outcome of the situation is?
Yes.
And how's she handling it?
Well, could you go get those folders from Melissa? So we did offer that she could create a statement that we would provide to you. And so she put that together, and so we will give each one of you a copy of that. There is a very serious concern about folks on social media just really, jumping to conclusions and the criticism that's been going on for the last few weeks has just been very harmful. You can imagine somebody who has gone through that experience and had that kind of panic. What's worse? What's a worse feeling than not knowing where your newborn infant is? And so there is, I don't know if there's a total agreement with our conclusions. The videos are somewhat grainy. There's potentially some, differences in interpretations. And so this is not a declaration of innocence as much as it is to make it clear that we have a legal standard that we have to hit. And I've only had this happen once before, where I felt as the prosecutor I had to intervene and just say, we're not at that legal standard, and I'm going to take that decision away from a jury or a judge. And so the one thing on my mind when we do that is, do we rip the Band-Aid off and get this over with? Or do we drag it out for months, a year, go through a trial, and the result in my professional judgment would not have been positive. And so that's one thing I considered is whether or not it was in the best interest of the mother to move forward if we felt like at some point this case was just not going to be prosecutable. So it's not that, number one, it's not that I don't believe the mother. It really comes down to when we put evidence in front of a jury, they're going to, the most trust they're going to have is in these videos. And if that's not going to support our case, we're doing a disservice to have someone go through the process and just be re-victimized.
What was Mr. Raine's reaction when you told him you're dropping the charges?
Actually, his counsel has just called during this. I've had trouble getting a hold of him today, so I don't think he's watching this, but we've had difficulty getting a hold of him because he's out of state. So
Where is he? Which state is he in?
no, his counsel.
His counsel.
Yeah, ethically we can't speak directly to a defendant. Well,
Well,
good.
one
There's
last
not a lot of questions. Go ahead.
Do you have a message to the community who are watching this right now, who, you said there was a lot of, impact on social media and probably some backlash to what happened. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the community regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've really come to a place on social media where there is a lot of thoughtlessness before posting. And, you know, before the facts were known even to law enforcement and us, we had plenty of people who had conclusions based on the most limited of information, and they were criticizing and making all kinds of statements that impacted this mother. I'm sure it impacted Mr. Raine. And that's not our system. That's not America. I mean, that's why we trust courts, and no one gets to make this singular decision on this. I mean, the police don't, I don't, the judges don't. I mean, even the jurors are limited in what happens. I mean, one single person can never make the decision. These are tough choices. I mean, we had a lot of people involved in this, and they were people that have an incredible amount of experience and expertise. And so to sit in your basement and write poison is just really disgusting. It's just inappropriate. It was appropriate, it was highly appropriate for this mother to tell Costco what had happened. It was extremely appropriate for Costco to contact the police. It was extremely appropriate for the police to investigate. It was extremely appropriate for us, based on the information we had, that was, you saw the probable cause statement. It was detailed. It was not something that was taken lightly. And it was extremely appropriate that we didn't give up at that point. We did everything we could to uncover more conclusive, more definitive evidence. All of that was extremely appropriate. And anybody who wants to say something different doesn't know what they're talking about. So please don't get your information from the comments section. And that's the reason we felt like people might not agree with this decision, but if we can at least put everything we can in front of the public so they can make this decision themselves, that, you know, that's our job, is to, as far as being transparent, and so that we are held accountable for our decisions. But I just, you know, I'm just really disappointed with some of the things that were said. And it included victim shaming. I mean, to suggest that, you know, this mother in some way was negligent or accountable for what happened is just unthinkable. You can't say anything, I think, more damaging, and it's just absolutely untrue.
Kind of along this vein, will any of this official footage be released to the public at any point?
Yeah, so we are allowed under the public records to release those things. It's the property of IFPD. Will allow them to make that decision, and certainly from my perspective, where the case is being dismissed, it's probably appropriate.
In a case like this, where it is so emotionally charged with a brand new baby, and something that, you know, initially came out as, oh my gosh, a baby being kidnapped, the community instantly has that protective concern. How important is it for everybody at this point to step back and look at this evidence that you presented before letting the emotions get in the way?
Right. You know, it's not just the community. I mean, again, I think there's just a commitment by all the professionals that were involved here that we can't get this wrong. And so the effort that was put into was exceptional. It was, you know, something where we wanted both as a prosecutor and a law enforcement agency, to have something to hang our hat on to make a rational and reasonable decision and apply an appropriate standard to what we have. You know, and I think that the community has to do that as well. We don't necessarily say, "Oh, just trust us." I mean, we're willing to put this information out so they understand what the basis of our decision was. But I just fear that there's not going to be a consensus. You know, people are going to continue to be suspicious, and I think that's unfortunately as far as we can get with this kind of level of evidence. We can be suspicious, but I just don't think the proof is there.
You talked a little bit about there were some inaccuracies in the mother's statement when she was explaining it. Could you go into more detail on that?
I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but
Okay.
you know, perhaps where the cart was. The video showed that was incorrect, but you know, when you're in that kind of panicked, you know, emotion, you're not taking notes, right? And so that's to be understood in any eyewitness testimony.
If I could follow up on that,
Yeah.
by inaccuracies, it's not anything nefarious, not anything like there was an intent to deceive, nothing like that. When we all leave here, if I ask you what did Chief Johnson say, you'll give me 8 different answers of what Chief Johnson said, then you'll have to go back to your camera to see what I actually said, right? Her basic statement of what happened was accurate. There were small facts that are very normal for a human being not to be able to remember all those facts. When you put all those facts together, it can paint pictures, and so that became part of the investigation. That mother was doing her best to do right for her baby and do right for her community, and she should not be blamed for that at all. That is, any human being that's asked what happened there will get some details wrong, and we know that's the limitation of eyewitnesses.
Right.
We know that's the limitation of eyewitnesses.
Especially under that kind of emotional circumstance. So, yeah, there was never anything that made us think that she was intentionally trying to deceive or had some agenda here. There doesn't seem to be any relationship at all between the two people up until this point, and so yeah, there's just no reason to believe that she was intentionally inaccurate. It was simple things that it would be hard for us if we all left this room and a day later tried to come in and reconstruct where everything was. We'd struggle with some of the details. So where the cart was, yeah, that threw her off. There was things that she just simply didn't remember, and that's again that idea of coming around that corner. I mean, there's things that you really focus on, but you know, all the details around that, you know. But that's again why the investigation kind of focused on these things objectively, that you know, we can see that video now, and so that kind of shows us. And again, I you know, I reiterate, you know, could someone conclude that the evidence shows a different possibility? Boy, to the limitations we have as humans, there's all kinds of possibilities, but that's not the world that I live in when we're going to when we're prosecuting a case. We have to be beyond that.
In the initial investigation, were his remarks, "I'm sorry, I won't ever do that again," of concern to you? Did that seem like, instead of saying, "Oh, I made a mistake, I grabbed the wrong card, I'm sorry," instead he said, "I'm sorry, I won't ever do that again"?
Yeah, that's part. So the arrest was based off of probable cause, and I think Mr. Neal did a great job talking about what probable cause is, right? And so you take the what we knew about, he grabbed the front of the cart, wheeled the baby out. That looks really suspicious. You take the exchange that they had afterwards when she's getting her baby back, and you saw her almost immediately turn around and go right after, you know. In their exchange, I'll never do that again. That's another part of it. You take the leaving the jurisdiction shortly thereafter, and trying to actually leave the state. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on that in the moment builds your probable cause. By the time we get to further investigation, there's explanations for a lot of those things, and that's why we're here today. But yeah, that's certainly one of many reasons why at that point, for public safety reasons, right, we have an obligation to protect the community. For risk flight reasons, there was a possibility that we were worried about the flight, the seriousness of what the allegation was. There's a lot of reasons why that decision was made at that time. The clock just says it's not the end of the game right there. That's not, okay, game over, we're done. More had to be done. And like I said, it's the way the system is designed, right? We uncovered additional evidence in cooperation with the prosecutor's office. I failed to mention, I know you're from BYU. BYU-Idaho was also absolutely helpful in the investigation, identifying things. And so as that information progressed, we're now at a different place today. And so, as a police department, we totally understand why the prosecutors are making the decision they make, and we don't have any argument with it.
And our system, again, is built on the presumption of innocence. There's a famous statement that actually comes from England about letting 10 guilty people go free rather than convict one innocent person. That's not our goal. Our goal isn't to see 10 guilty people go free. But we're very careful of that innocent person that could be convicted wrongly. And I'll tell you, in my experience with juries, they are very unforgiving if we don't have adequate evidence. And that's gotten worse over time rather than better. I think that juries today are very strict in their scrutiny of the state's case. And so, again, I think I don't want to be re-victimizing a victim who's going to have to go through this roller coaster of just constantly gearing up emotionally for each step if we're at the end of the day unable to prove our case. And I mean, that's the state of the case. If I even felt that other investigatory steps could reveal more information, we would be putting off the decision until we completed that.
Did the baby sleep through the whole thing?
She's not talking about it, so we didn't get a good interview on her.
Did not get a good interview from the baby.
The baby is one cute baby, though. That I can tell you.
Not traumatized.
This is just a super good family. We were able to meet with them early on, and she's frustrated. Mom is frustrated, of course. And you'll see in their statements about, just the toll that it's had on her. But there's absolutely, in my view, just absolutely no ill will towards anybody. She has that concern about the public safety, and that was, I think, her sole motivation. On the other hand, I mean, we saw some odd behavior that, in and of itself, I mean, these were factors. We were putting like pebbles on a pile, but I mean, they turned out, I guess, the question we had was it motivating the act, or was it something that could have distracted him from the act? And the part we've always had difficulty getting past is, how could you mistake the two cards? But really based on some of that, the issues that became apparent to us, then it could quite easily have been part of why he was so distracted and didn't understand what he was doing. So is he a mastermind that was just testing the system and never planned to get out of the store? I mean, that's just speculation. And that's not something that the criminal justice system can rely on or should rely on. So, yeah, that's where we are.